Have you ever found yourself in that moment when someone spoke to you with little respect? And instead of standing tall, you just smiled it off? Or when you agreed to do something your heart didn't want, just to keep the peace? I believe, no matter our age, we've all been there. And the Stoics reminded us long ago, every time you shrink yourself, you're quietly teaching the world how to treat you. I want you to picture this. What if today you lived with an unshakable sense of self-respect? What if you walked into a room without needing to prove anything, just being fully yourself? How different would that feel? In my years of working with adults, from their 20s all the way into retirement, I've noticed something powerful. Respect always begins with the way we treat ourselves. Psychology tells us the same. When you repeatedly accept what hurts you, your brain starts to believe you deserve it. But when you choose to stand firm, when you stay loyal to your values, the world has no choice but to adjust. In this video, we'll uncover 8 Stoic lessons principles that will help you stand strong, stay disciplined, and never shrink yourself again. And if these words speak to you, share your thoughts in the comments. And let me know which part resonates most. Don't forget to subscribe, so we can continue this Stoic journey together. Leçon. Stop over-explaining. Have you noticed how often we feel the urge to explain ourselves? Maybe you've made a decision that feels right in your heart, but before you even take a step, you find yourself giving a long list of reasons, hoping others will approve, hoping they'll understand. But here's the truth. Every time you over-explain, you're quietly asking for permission to exist. You're saying, I can't fully trust my judgment until you validate it. And whether we realize it or not, that weakens our presence. The Stoics had a very different approach. Epictetus once said, if you want to be a writer, write. He didn't say, explain why you want to write, until everyone agrees it's a good idea. He simply said, do it, because actions are stronger than explanations. Let me give you an example. Imagine a woman in her 50s who decides to finally change careers. She's raised her kids. She's given years of her life to a job she doesn't love. And now she wants something different. But the moment she tells her family, she feels the need to defend her choice. I know it's late in life, but I just don't want to waste time anymore. I've been thinking about this for years, and before long, her excitement turns into insecurity. Why? Because she handed over her power the moment she started over-explaining. Instead of standing firm in her decision, she opened the door for doubt, both from others and from herself. Have you ever done that? Mala decisión. Then immediately felt you had to give a speech about it. The more words you used, the weaker your conviction felt. That's the trap. And the Stoics warned us, when you over-explain, you shift focus away from your values and onto other people's opinions. Now, I want you to picture something different. Imagine walking into a room and simply saying, this is the choice I'm making. No long story, no excuses, just a calm clarity. You may be surprised how quickly people take you seriously when you stop trying to convince them. It doesn't mean you become rude or arrogant. Not at all. It means you recognize that your life is not a courtroom, and you don't need to present evidence before a jury. People who radiate quiet confidence rarely explain themselves. They act, and because they act without asking for approval, their choices carry weight. Psychologists today echo this. Research shows that over-explaining often comes from insecurity, this subtle belief that I'm not enough unless I can prove it. And the more we seek validation, the less we trust our own inner compass. So what can we do instead? The Stoics would tell us, define your values, make decisions based on them, and let your actions speak louder than your words. When you feel that urge to justify yourself, pause, ask, do I need this person's understanding to move forward? If the answer is no, then your silence will be more powerful than any explanation. Let me ask you, who in your life do you admire most? Think of that friend, mentor, or leader. Do they waste time defending every little choice? Or do they move with a sense of clarity? My guess is, they speak less and live more. That's the essence of Stoic strength. So next time you catch yourself about to explain why you chose a certain path, stop, smile, trust yourself, because the one who constantly explains has given away their value, but the one who acts without waiting for applause already holds importance. Today, I want you to try something simple. Choose one decision, no matter how small, and own it without explanation. Maybe it's what you eat for dinner. Maybe it's saying no to a request. Maybe it's how you spend your afternoon. And when that urge to justify rises up, breathe and let it go. You'll be amazed how freeing it feels. Remember this: important people don't talk about being important. They live in a way that makes it obvious. So if this resonates with you, write it in the comments. I no longer explain my worth, because your worth isn't a debate. It's a fact. And the moment you believe that, the world will too. Leçon 2. Stop chasing to be seen. Have you ever caught yourself working twice as hard, bending over backwards, just to be noticed by someone who barely sees you? Maybe it's in a friendship where you're always the one reaching out, or maybe at work, where you give more than expected, not because you love the job, but because you're hoping someone will finally recognize your worth. It's a painful cycle, isn't it? And here's the irony. The harder you chase attention, the smaller you become in the eyes of the very people you're trying to impress, because chasing sends a silent message. Your recognition matters more than my self-worth. And once you communicate that, they start to believe it. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul takes on the color of its thoughts." If your mind constantly spins around the questions, how do I make them notice me? How do I prove I matter? Then your life becomes shaped by neediness, and neediness always reduces value. Let me share a story from my coaching experience. A man in his 40s came to me, exhausted. He said, "I'm always the one showing up for people. I check in on friends. I take on extra projects at work. I try so hard to be there for everyone. And yet, when I need support, no one shows up." Do you know why? Because he was teaching people to take his effort for granted. By chasing their attention, he set the terms of the relationship. I must prove myself to be worthy. And when you live like that, people rarely stop to ask, what about him? What does he need? The Stoic way is different. It says, step out of the race completely. Don't compete for someone's recognition. Don't let your self-esteem hang on whether or not someone sees you. True value doesn't need a spotlight. It reveals itself in silence, in consistency, in the way you carry yourself. I want you to picture this. Imagine standing in a room full of people who don't notice you. Instead of performing, instead of stretching yourself thin to gain their approval, you simply stand tall. You focus on your own growth, your own principles, your own goals. slowly. The right people will notice you, not because you begged for it, but because they can feel your presence. That's the paradox. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you quit begging to be seen, people begin to wonder about you, to respect you, even to admire you. And here's the key. The people who didn't see your value before, many of them will only notice once you stop trying. That's when you realize their attention was never worth chasing in the first place. Epictetus said it best. If you want to improve, be content to be seen as foolish or misunderstood. In other words, be okay with being overlooked for a while. Be okay with not fitting into someone's narrow view. Because in time, your steady growth will shine through, and those who truly matter will recognize it without you having to beg. So let me ask you, how much of your life have you spent trying to earn recognition from people who didn't truly value you? And what would your life look like if you simply stopped? This week, I want you to practice one thing. Withdraw your energy from chasing. If you find yourself waiting for that text, that compliment, that pat on the back, pause. Instead, redirect that energy towards something that builds you. Read, create, rest, or invest in the people who already see your worth without you proving it. Remember this. Attention is cheap, but respect is priceless. Respect comes only when you refuse to beg for it. So if this speaks to you, write it in the comments. I stopped chasing to be seen, because your value was never in someone else's eyes. It's always been within you. Leçon 3. Master the quiet exit. Have you ever stayed in a place long after you knew it was no longer good for you? Maybe in a friendship where you were always giving but rarely receiving. Maybe in a job where your effort went unnoticed. Or even in a relationship where your presence was taken for granted. And yet, you stayed. You stayed because leaving felt like failure. But here's the truth. Remaining in spaces that drain you is not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca once said, "Keep company with those who make you better. Welcome those you can also uplift." His point was clear. If a bond doesn't sharpen you, it's not worth preserving. So what does strength look like here? It doesn't always look like a heated argument, or standing your ground until the last word is said. Sometimes, true strength is the quiet act of walking away without warning, without fanfare, without begging the other person to understand. I once worked with a woman in her 60s who stayed in a professional circle for years. Even though she constantly felt overlooked, every meeting left her drained. Every interaction chipped away at her confidence. But she told herself, if I just explain how I feel, maybe they'll change. The problem, each time she tried to explain, she gave those people a script, a way to delay the inevitable. They promised to listen. They said things would be different, but soon enough, the same cycle returned. Only when she chose to leave quietly, without waiting for their permission, did she finally feel free. Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop explaining why you're leaving, your decision carries more weight? You're no longer asking for agreement. You're simply honoring your own boundaries. And here's why the quiet exit matters. It changes you internally. It tells your future self, I will no longer justify staying where I'm undervalued. It reinforces dignity. It reminds you that your worth is not up for debate. Think about it this way. When you announce your departure with a long explanation, you're still trying to convince the other person that your peace matters. But when you simply walk away, you've already convinced the one person who matters most, you. Now, I want you to imagine this. Picture yourself in a room filled with noise, where you are constantly trying to be heard, but never truly seen. Then imagine yourself quietly standing, picking up your coat, and leaving. No words. No anger. No need for closure. Just silence. That silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the best revenge is not to become like those who wronged you. That means don't match their chaos. Don't lower yourself to their level. Rise above it by removing yourself entirely. This lesson goes far beyond personal relationships. It applies to work, to social circles, even to habits and environments that no longer serve you. If it doesn't honor your value, you don't need a dramatic farewell. You just need to step away. And here's the paradox. The less you cling, the more power you have. When others realize you won't beg, you won't chase, you won't linger in places that don't honor you, they begin to see your worth more clearly than ever before. So let me leave you with this question. Where in your life are you staying too long? Where have you been waiting for people to change? Instead of quietly walking towards something better, if this resonates, write it in the comments. My silence is my strength. Because sometimes the loudest statement you can make is simply leaving without a sound. Leçon 4. Guard your time like treasure. I want you to think about this for a moment. If someone gave you $86,400 every morning and said, spend it all before midnight, whatever you don't use, you lose. How carefully would you spend it? You'd probably be deliberate, wouldn't you? You wouldn't hand it to strangers. You wouldn't waste it on things you didn't care about. But here's the truth. Every day, you're given something even more valuable, 86,400 seconds. And unlike money, you can never earn them back. Once they're gone forever. The Stoics were clear about this. Seneca wrote, it's not that life is short, but that we waste much of it. And if we're honest, how much of our time slips away on obligations we don't believe in? Conversations that drain us, or endless distractions that leave us emptier, not fuller. I've seen this in countless people I've worked with, especially those in their 50s and 60s. They look back and say, where did the time go? Not because life was too short, but because they spent too much of it on things that never really mattered. Have you felt that before? The regret of an afternoon lost to scrolling, or months lost in a job that stole your peace, or years in routines that gave you nothing in return. Guarding your time isn't about becoming cold or unavailable. It's about recognizing that saying yes to one thing always means saying no to something else. And too often, what we say no to are the things that would truly nourish us, our health, our growth, our relationships, even our rest. Think of the people in your life who constantly demand your availability, the ones who call at all hours, who expect you to bend, who drain your energy without giving back. When you always say yes, you're quietly teaching them that your time isn't worth guarding, and if you don't value it, why would they? The Stoics remind us that our schedule is one of the few things we actually control. You may not control how long you live, but you control how you live with the time you have. And when you treat your hours like gold, others begin to respect them too. I want you to imagine your time as sacred appointments. You wouldn't cancel a meeting with someone important. Why? Then, do we so easily cancel on ourselves? If you've blocked time for your health, your reflection, or your purpose. Honor it as you would a meeting with a president or a king, because you are just as important. Modern psychology even shows us this. People who set clear boundaries with their time not only live with less stress, but they also experience deeper satisfaction in their later years. Why? Because they spent their days with intention, not reaction. So, here's a challenge for you. Before you say yes to anything this week, pause and ask, if this were my final week on earth, would I give my time to this? If the answer is no, let it go. Life is too precious to be handed over to obligations that shrink your soul. Remember this. Money lost can be earned again. Opportunities missed may circle back, but time wasted never returns. Guard it. Treasure it. Invest it in what truly matters. And if this resonates with you, write it in the comments. My time is priceless, because the moment you start treating your time like treasure, the quality of your life will change forever. Leçon 5. Say less. Let it matter more. Have you ever been in a room with someone who barely spoke, but when they finally opened their mouth, everyone leaned in? Their words seemed to carry weight, not because they were loud, but because they were rare. That's the kind of power the Stoics believed in. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught that words should serve truth and clarity, not ego or impulse. And Epictetus reminded us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. The idea is simple. The more you speak, the easier it is for your words to lose impact. But when you choose them carefully, they echo longer in the minds of others. I remember working with a gentleman in his late 50s who told me, I talk too much when I'm nervous. I fill the silence because I don't want to feel invisible. Maybe you've done that too, rambling in a meeting, or talking over yourself at dinner, just to avoid the awkward quiet. But here's the paradox. Silence is rarely awkward. It's powerful. People remember the calm voice in the storm more than the one who shouts over the noise. Think about the people you admire most. Maybe a wise teacher, a mentor, or even a grandparent. Were they the ones who spoke endlessly? Or were they the ones who listened, who observed, and then offered a few words that landed like a stone in still water? The Stoics practiced restraint in speech because they knew that every unnecessary word diluted the value of the necessary ones. And modern psychology agrees. Studies show that when you speak less, people perceive you as more thoughtful, more competent, and even more trustworthy. I want you to imagine this. You're in a conversation where emotions are running high. Instead of rushing to defend yourself, you pause, you breathe, you let others finish their storm of words, and then, with calm clarity, you say 1 or 2 sentences that cut through the noise. Suddenly, the whole atmosphere shifts. That's the discipline of verbal restraint. And it's not just about conflict, it's about everyday life too. Too often, we speak just to fill silence, to look clever, or to seek approval. But every time we do, we give away a little bit of our presence. When you speak less, your presence itself begins to speak louder. This doesn't mean you become distant or cold. It means you learn to let your stillness carry authority. It means you understand that silence itself is a choice, a message, a line in the sand, and when you finally do speak, people know to listen. Marcus Aurelius offered a beautiful filter. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. Imagine running every word through that test. How much more peace would you create? How much more respect would your voice earn? So here's a practice you can try this week. The next time you feel the urge to speak quickly, pause. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this helpful? Or am I just afraid of silence? Then choose with intention. You'll notice your words beginning to carry a different kind of gravity, because in the end, important people don't need to prove their importance with endless talking. They let their presence, their silence, and their actions do the work. So, if this resonates with you, write it in the comments. My silence holds power. And remember, your words don't have to be many to matter. They just have to be true. Leçon 6. Say less. Let your words carry weight. Have you ever met someone who barely spoke? Yet when they finally did, their words seemed to hang in the air heavy. Powerful. Unforgettable. That's the kind of presence the Stoics believed in. Not the one who fills the room with chatter, but the one whose silence speaks louder than most people's noise. Wise people know this secret. The fewer words you use, the more impact they carry. Think of a mentor, a parent, or even a grandparent you admired. Were they the ones who talked endlessly? Or were they the ones who listened deeply and then offered one sentence that you carried with you for years? Epictetus reminded us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. The Stoics practiced restraint because they understood something we often forget. Words lose value when we scatter them without thought. I once worked with a man in his early 60s who said to me, when I was younger, I thought I had to talk to prove myself. Every meeting, every gathering, I filled the silence. But as I've grown older, I realized silence itself is a kind of strength. People take you seriously when you don't waste your breath. Isn't that true? Silence makes people lean in. It creates space. It gives weight to the words that finally do come. But why do so many of us talk too much? Often, it's fear. Fear of being invisible. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear that if we don't keep talking, others will forget us. And yet, the paradox is this. The more you talk without substance, the easier you are to ignore. People remember the calm, steady voice in the storm, not the one shouting over it. The Stoics would say that every unnecessary word is a leak of energy, a crack in your presence. By speaking less, you preserve your authority. You stop giving people more chances to twist your words or judge your intent. You keep your dignity intact. I want you to picture yourself in a heated conversation. Emotions are high. Everyone's voice is raised. Instead of matching the noise, you pause. You breathe. You let silence fill the space. And when you finally speak calmly, clearly, with just a few words, the entire atmosphere changes. That's the power of restraint. That's the kind of authority that doesn't have to be forced, because it's natural. This doesn't mean you become distant or superior. It means you allow stillness to do the work. It means you let your actions and presence carry as much weight as your words. And when you finally do speak, people know you mean it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it's not true, don't say it. If it's not right, don't do it." Imagine applying that to your conversations. How many arguments would disappear? How many regrets would never happen? So here's a challenge for you. The next time you feel the urge to fill the silence, pause. Ask yourself, do I need to say this? Or am I just afraid of being quiet? If it's not necessary, hold it back. Your silence will say more than any filler words ever could. Remember this. Important. People don't need to remind you of their importance. Their presence speaks. Their silence commands. And when they do speak, every word lands with the force of truth. So if this resonates with you, write it in the comments. My silence carries weight, because sometimes the most powerful voice in the room is the one that doesn't need to be loud at all. Leçon 7. Live by non-negotiable principles. Have you ever been in a moment where you felt pressured to compromise what you believe in? Just to fit in. Just to keep the peace. Maybe it was at work, when you nodded along with something you knew was wrong. Maybe it was in a relationship, when you let your values slide because you were afraid of losing someone's affection. We've all been there, and every time it happens, a little piece of our dignity slips away. The Stoics warned us about this. Epictetus said, "Never exchange your integrity for anything unworthy." That means no amount of money, no promise of acceptance, no temporary affection is worth the cost of betraying yourself. When I think about people who've lived with strength, it's not those who were the loudest or the richest, it's those who had a clear code of values and refused to break it. I once knew a man in his 70s, a retired teacher. He told me, "In all my years, I may not have been the smartest in the room, but people knew this. I would not lie. I would not cheat. And I would not sell out my students for convenience." That was his code. And because of that, decades later, former students still respected him. What about you? What principles guide your life, the ones you will not bargain with, even when no one's watching? The danger of not having non-negotiables is that the world will write them for you. People will test your limits. Work will demand more of you than you should give. Relationships will ask for sacrifices that chip away at your soul. And if you haven't drawn a line, you'll keep moving it further and further back, until one day you no longer know where it was. But when you decide, "This is who I am, and this I will not betray," something changes. Your life gains clarity. Decisions become simpler. You no longer wonder, "Should I?" Because the answer is already written in your principles. Think of it like a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't move with the waves or bend with the storm. It stays firm, guiding ships through the chaos. Your principles are that lighthouse, and when others see that consistency, they begin to trust you, not because you always please them, but because they know exactly where you stand. Modern psychology echoes this too. Research on self-respect shows that when we violate our own values, we experience guilt, stress, even depression. But when we stay true to them, we feel stronger, more at peace, and more resilient, even in hardship. I want you to imagine this. You're offered an opportunity that promises quick success, but it requires betraying something you hold dear. In that moment, you remember your code, and you say no. Maybe others think you're foolish. Maybe they walk away, but years later, you'll still be able to look in the mirror and respect the person staring back at you. And that's worth more than any short-term gain. So I ask you, what are your non-negotiables? What principles will you carry even when it costs you something? Write them down. Live by them. Guard them fiercely. Because if you don't, the world will gladly trade your integrity for its convenience. Remember this. Temporary comfort fades, but character lasts a lifetime. If this speaks to you, share it in the comments. I live by my principles, because once you declare them and stand by them, you stop needing the world's approval. You already have your own. Leçon 8. Choose gratitude over comparison. Let me ask you something. How many times have you looked at someone else's life and thought, why not me? Maybe it was their house, their career, their health, or the way their family seemed so perfect in those holiday photos. Comparison is a thief. It sneaks in quietly and convinces you that what you have is never enough. The Stoics saw this danger clearly. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In other words, richness isn't measured by how much you own, but by how little you need in order to feel whole. I remember working with a woman in her late 50s who told me, "I spent most of my life looking sideways at my sister's success, at my neighbor's vacations, at my friend's health, and all it ever gave me was bitterness. The moment I began practicing gratitude, really noticing what I had, I felt younger, lighter, freer than I had in decades." Isn't that true for so many of us? Comparaison drains us. Gratitude replenishes us. When you look at what you already have, when you give thanks for the breath in your lungs, the roof over your head, the people who love you, you realize you're not lacking as much as your mind tells you. Psychologists today back this up. Studies show that daily gratitude practices reduce stress, improve sleep, and even strengthen relationships. Why? Because gratitude shifts our focus from scarcity to abundance. It rewires the brain to look for what's good. Instead of obsessing over what's missing, the Stoics believed that by focusing on what lies within our control, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. And gratitude is the perfect example. You can't control what someone else has. You can't control their wealth, their status, or their health. But you can control whether you pause and give thanks for your own life. I want you to picture this. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and, before looking at your phone or thinking about yesterday's problems, you simply whisper to yourself, "Thank you. Thank you for another chance. Thank you for this day. Thank you for the breath that fills my lungs." How would your day unfold if you started from that place of enough? Here's the paradox. When you stop comparing and start appreciating, you often end up feeling richer than those you once envied, because contentment isn't about catching up with someone else's race. It's about realizing you already hold the treasure in your hands. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Imagine how your life might change if gratitude became your default way of thinking. So here's a simple challenge. Tonight, before you go to bed, write down 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big. Maybe it's a conversation, a meal, or the quiet moment you took for yourself. Then, notice how your perspective begins to shift, because gratitude is more than a habit, it's a way of life. And when you practice it, comparison loses its grip on you. If this resonates with you, write it in the comments. Gratitude is my strength, because once you choose gratitude over comparison, you stop chasing what's outside, and you finally start living in peace with what's within. Self-respect doesn't come from applause. It doesn't come from how many people approve of you, or how many cheer for your decisions. True dignity comes from living in alignment with your own principles, those quiet, steady values that no one can take from you. And here's something to remember. You cannot force anyone to respect you. You can't control their opinions or their actions, but you can always choose how you treat yourself. The moment you begin to stand tall, to honor your own worth, the world has no choice but to adjust. So let this be the image you carry with you. When you stop shrinking, when you stop bending just to fit, the world will eventually make room for your true size. That's the power of self-respect. If this message speaks to you, I invite you to declare it right now, right in the comments. Today, I stand in my worth. Let those words be your promise to yourself. And if you found value in this, I encourage you like this video to spread the Stoic message. Subscribe so we can continue this journey together. And share it with someone who needs this reminder today.